How's it going, my builders? I hope you guys are enjoying. Stays healthy, keeping on update with the news, looking ongoing with the Brexit happening, and they're still ongoing with the millennial. Is that how it's pronounced? Millennial, yep. Millennial is still fighting in, even after the results. That is a 52 leave to 58% of staying. The most interesting fact about the vote is the older generation voted out, where
millennial
voted in, which I find it interesting. And why would I want to make this video with just nothing regards to Australia? The reason behind is because I felt like we, as Australia or UK, Australia or any other parts of the first world country, are facing the same consequence. The only difference is that the Brexit, Britain, having intake of mass migrant population. So I write like heaps of notes down, so definitely we'll go through the whole thing. Now, we go through the more refugees, migrants, it impacts the country. The current infrastructure are not designed of capability to hold mass immigration or migrants. The result of that will create shortage on housing. Housing prices are quadrupling. Jobs are getting competitive, which creates unemployment rate due to job shortage. And speaking of job shortage, that's what we're facing right now. I'm pretty sure Canada, Australia, Britain, UK, we are facing a very similar consequence. But particularly in Britain, the Brexit, I can't say Britain, the United Kingdom are facing a lot heavier than all of us, and which I'll get to it. And as you guys know, a lot of countries out there are accepting of the migrants, especially with the Middle Eastern. In the past we did with the Lebanon, Afghanistan, Iraq, and now the Syria. Now it's largely with Syria. And what actually creates the problem by doing that is if migrants are coming from a low socio-economic background, are most likely get on the welfare. Now, there's a lot of countries in the EU, and migrants tend to choose a country who has a lot of welfare. Now, by doing that, the country's money is keep drying up. The benefit, increased demanding of income tax and GST, all by cutting funds. So you have a large migrants and you have a welfare state, and coming in, that is pretty much using the country's taxes, and it's struggled to generate the country's functioning. So not only just that, you also have job shortages. Cost of living is going up, income tax is increasing, GST increasing. We've driven more company offshore the jobs overseas, because if you're a company and you realize the company that you stayed, the government is increasing the taxes or GST, the profit margin is really low, so they may as well just offshore to another country and follow their tax or regulation, which is tend to be a lot lower. And this is the reason why Australia, Canada, and all of us, we are facing the same problem. But to make the country function properly, government will find ways to cutting funds in different areas, which creates mass ongoing protests. Now, one thing that I realized from moving from Sydney to Melbourne is that there are so many protests going on in Melbourne, and whether it's migrants, whether it's tax, whether it's everything, it's just every single day there's a protest going on in Melbourne. And I find it unusual for a Sydney person to see that, but for Melburnians will find it very normal. But yeah, where am I up to? So mass protests, leaving no choice. The government will increase the social areas of funds. By increasing funds, we're talking about like council fees, health and medical department, and also the university fees. But it goes on. You kind of get the message going on, and that's what all the protests is going on. Whether it's increase or cutting funds, this is the protest is going on. And why it's happening every single day in Melbourne? Can't say every single day, but in a week there's a couple of protests. All I can say that in Swanston Street. Okay. Now, the main purpose of Brexit for leaving the EU, basically closing border of EU migrants. It does not mean UK is banning all migrants altogether. By leaving EU, having to control their own borders, which means migrants will have to go through immigration department and waiting for government approval. Obviously, by doing that, the intake of migrants is a lot lower than what it is back then. Because each year, UK accepts 330,000 migrants each year. That is a record high. Where Australia only accepts 30,000 people each year under humanitarian visa. So I'm not sure on the 330,000 migrants, is it under that or is it the complete including humanitarian visa and with the whole EU. But that's a lot, just to take on 330,000. That's a lot every single year. And can you imagine how much of the welfare states, I'm not saying all 330,000, but how many homes and how many welfare states, and to flooding the percentage of 330,000, that's beyond amazing. And it doesn't stop there. It can be ongoing for 30 years for that each person. So if that person came in this year, and if it's coming from a low social economic background country, usually they have a low education, will most likely get on the welfare until they find a proper job to raise a family, the whole entire family, which is a difficult part for a lot of migrants to go through that. And yeah, so we got 30,000 weighing out with 330,000. See, in Australia we are, I can't say Australia, but I see in Melbourne we are constantly protesting every single week. Something's going on, and you see all the cuttings and the funds. We always protest. And can you imagine 330,000? What Great Britain is facing, if Melbourne is currently facing 30,000 refugees, which is not a big problem. Like I said, there's also another problems. So if you bring a large migrant in, it brings a lot of problems within the country. So increasing cost of living, taxes, and it just brings a lot of problems, and it's get really nasty, and people got fed up and they have to go up and start doing protests because. Let's get back to the topic. Being a forward country, I encourage to take as much of migrants, and being a diversity country, and we are encouraged to not being discriminate or accept one another, showing peace and love. That's what we're brought up, right? Nothing wrong with that. Supporting migrants in each migrant in the welfare state costs the government billions. I could not know how much that will cost be, but things like being in my generation of being millennial, diversity is part of our nature. More and more suburbs are swollen up, being different part of culturalism. Like what you see in Sydney, and the difference between Sydney and Melbourne is that Sydney, we have a lot of suburbs we can name, like, oh, this is Italian suburb, or this is a Greek suburb, this is like a Lebanese suburb, or this is like a Chinese suburbs, and this is go on and go on. We have a lot of suburbs are like that in Sydney, but in Melbourne, we don't get that. So can you imagine that in Great Britain, there's a whole dynamic area. They have a large migrants, Pakistan and India, and yes, they clustered in one area, and that's why we need to create more of that. it kind of loses the culture and forces, you know, the older settlements or the early settlement people pushing out further out, whether it's Italian, Greeks, or is where does Jewish come from? I'm sorry. Wherever Jewish background, that's Australia. The history is the Jewish, Greeks, Italians, and you know, they cluster in one area, and now they've been forced to move out. Large minority, new minority is flooding in, and it's just going on and on. It's like a repetitive cycle, but it's getting a lot more diverse than it is before. Now, obviously, it's costing, like being a born, you know, millennial. Gosh, that's so hard to pronounce it. Gosh, yeah, you know, like right now in Great Britain, right, the elders are most likely to vote for out because of all whatever that reason that I explained to you guys, and because it's damaging the culture of identity. So, as I mentioned before, in Great Britain, there's a large minority of Indians and Pakistans, same as Sydney, you have a large minority of Middle Eastern and Chinese. It literally, what happened over time is or not even over time, but even the moment, it destroys the culture, and it pushes people out further out, and most of the people got fed up with the culture, and they just move out to a different state, or it's driving people out, or move to another country. And that's what the problem is causing at the moment, and that's why the elders are voting to leave. Now, as you can see on the news right now, that gosh, I don't know how to pronounce it properly. Millennial is wanting to you know, getting back with the EU, or request a second referendum. That is very interesting, just to know that. But to be honest with you guys, like, if I did not understand of the socio-economic or how does migrants driven out, you know, to be honest with you guys, it's like saying, you know, because I brought up in a very diverse suburbs, very diversity, and it's always in my blood. I never see it as a danger, as a threat. But what you see currently, if you research or look through, or you go through your parents' shoes, and how much it's creating, is affecting everyone, and it's creating more competition and driving a lot more, we can say, Australian businesses out of business or go offshore, and it's creating a lot of dilemma by doing that, and it's not something that is very pleasant. And that's the reason why, you know, the elders are voting out, and we're millennial, like for us, we just, oh, I got the word now. We wanted to vote it in, and you know, the people who wanted to vote it in with a mass protest, majority of them has not completely understanding that the effect that really causes them. And the things that comes into the mind is, it finds it difficult to travel back to the EU, any of the countries or regions of France or anything, but finds it difficult, or no more EU brands established in UK, so they're pretty much driven out. All migrants are less likely to be kicked out. These are the stuff that is coming through millennial in Britain at the moment, and there's a lot more of stories behind of it, which I find very they should think twice before what they say. I don't want to talk about it because I find it very bizarre. But I don't think the millennial like us will understand why we got kicked out. Aren't we happy the way we are? You know, mixed together, peace, love, accepting one another. There's nothing wrong. Just keep the ways. Why we want to change? Why we want to close the border and everything? And I felt like if there's a referendum in Australia, I'm pretty sure a lot of Australians would think of that in my era, compared to the ones is like a lot older generation. So that is the biggest reason why I wanted to make a video. It's just that if Britain a Brexit, or if there's an Australia or whatever what we name, it's just gonna be something. The millennial is like, we're not knowing the after effect because we're born and bred that same era, the same generation, that our environment and our atmosphere, that's why we are like that. So let's get back to it. And now watching this video makes you realize why currently Trump wants to close borders with Mexicans, for Mexicans to build their own wall, or you understand why Australia, we voted for Liberals, Tony Abbott, to close the boat people, preventing them to come to this country. And now you completely understand why the government are picking on their own people, like with constantly raising the taxes and cost of living. And you know what hurts the most? It's my generation, to be honest with you guys. My generation, or the younger generation, mostly, because we're not acknowledged. And now most of the media keep saying, you're not gonna get your first house, you're no way you're gonna get the first house, or you know, we most likely just too much news media just bombarded what's going on. And you have to understand this. As a forward country, we want to move forward, we want more competition, and welcome to the globalization. That's what I can say right now. Welcome to the globalization. And that is the video. I hope you guys have a sense of understanding of what's alike of this whole Brexit, and how does that can, you know, affected, you know, your country as well. You see the effects, and now you understand why is the protest, why the government's cutting funds, why are they increasing, why they're doing this and why they do that. This video pretty much summarized the whole much about it. And it sucks to see that and hear that, because I'm not sure whether I want to do university now, because we have constantly protesting for $100,000 for the degree. We are following the same steps with the America. So it's like a cycle. The Americans, each students, they have to, at the end of their degree, they pay $100,000. So Australia is heading that way, and it's scary just to see that. It's like a cycle. Now you understand this whole cycle. Whole cycle. Wow. Anywho, I may not cover all the topics. I just write the whole script down. And if you felt like there's something missing, please comment below or give me your thoughts. I respond ASAP, because I felt like this topic is very important to be discussed, rather than keep disclosed or indoor, or you know, have a better understanding.